Welcome to week 6 of the PFF betting show. I am here, as always, with Judah Fortgang and Mason Cameron here in Cincinnati with me. And fellas, we got 5 primetime island games, whatever you want to call them. That's about the max number we can get. That's typically a bad sign for me because I tend to bet somewhat irresponsibly on island games. I don't know about you guys.
I think it's just human nature.
I would say it's irresponsible not to be irresponsible.
There we go.
You absolutely have to. When we are blessed with an island slate or so many island games, you almost have to, though I would quibble slightly. I think that next week when we have maybe 2 weeks, and there's a 7 and 10 Monday Night Football game, that is as ideal as it gets.
That's true.
What's this 7:15, 8:15 nonsense?
As an East Coast guy, I know you're East Coast too, but I much prefer that where I can stagger it a little bit rather than the stack. But I guess they're not true island games.
We can't give the NFL too many ideas. We're gonna start playing football on Tuesday like it's Maction. So
we'll talk a little bit about the game last night. Unfortunately, we have to. But before we get into that, if you would like to look at the grades and look at all this data that we're about to talk about and help research for your bets, if you would like access to the player prop tool, which last week, week 5, very good week for the player prop tool. On all non-touchdown bets with an edge of at least 10%, the tool went 121 and 88 with plus 17.9 units. So if you would like access to that comes with the PFF Plus subscription in the PFF app. And we will jump into a quick recap of this Eagles-Giants game that did not go at all how I expected. I thought this was a nice spot for Philadelphia to bounce back against the Giants defense that has really struggled to stop the run. The Giants defense that plays man coverage, which seems to kind of play into what the Eagles want to do and Jalen Hurts' strengths. The Giants were without Malik Nabers and Darius Slayton. They were trotting out Lil Jordan Humphrey and Wan'Dale Robinson as their 2 receivers and a bunch of 12 personnel. Lil Jordan Humphrey just got called up from the practice squad this week, and the Giants handled him. Really, really concerning game for the Eagles.
yeah, I was on Giants team total under 16.5. I thought that was going to be an easy under there. I thought they were going to really, really struggle against this defense, but they came out lights out, and a big reason why is Jackson Dart. Jackson Dart, 89.7 PFF grade. He played without a doubt his best game. We had big moments from Cam Scattaboo. At first we were talking about it upstairs. At first it was looking like it was going to go as planned when, the Eagles were ripping off some big runs right there at the beginning. It was going to be a nice night for Saquon, and that quickly fell off the rails. So, I guess it just goes to show you really, any given Sunday is a saying for a reason, for sure.
Yeah.
Or Monday,
I'd even just say
Thursday.
Any given Sunday, Thursday, it's football.
Yeah, there we go.
It works. It doesn't need to be precise. I think also it's a reminder of the importance of game state and the Eagles were trailing 14-3 right off the bat. They score a touchdown there. A couple things happen a little differently. The Giants hit on a bunch of explosive plays. Those are, variant events. That's not things that consistently happen, and the sequencing of that matters. Jalen Hurts threw 9 pass attempts with the lead. Trailing in the second half. Basically for the last 15 weeks of last season. This is just not a state the Eagles were in, and this is a different offense. And I think also Jalen Hurts is not the same quarterback. The offensive line hasn't been as good. They're seeing a ton of disruption. You can't miss a deep ball for a 90-yard touchdown to Devonta Smith. That can't happen. You don't get many opportunities for such explosive plays. Certainly a surprising game, and one I'm a little annoyed that I over-indexed a little too much on Jackson Dart's first 2 games, which were pretty bad. Especially the Eagles were hurt. Jalen Carter's out. Losing Quinyon Mitchell didn't help there, but the performance I don't think we've seen from the Giants in many, many years.
I also over-indexed on Jackson Dart's first 2 games. The Quinyon Mitchell injury is massive because we've talked all year about the number 2 cornerback spot for Philadelphia being one that you can attack, and all of a sudden the 2 guys competing for that job are both on the field. And even with the injuries, Giants were able to get open. Jackson Dart was able to hit them. Great on third downs in this game. 7 for 9, 99 yards, 90-plus PFF passing grade on third down, 2 scrambles for first downs. That was a big part for New York as well.
Well, and another big thing is Zach Bond has been one of their most consistent players on defense, and he just really did not play all that well. And you could tell when they were spying him on Jackson Dart that it just did not work out. He really didn't have an answer for him. That athleticism difference showed up, and that really did make the difference, because Dart felt comfortable enough that if he did have to escape, he was going to be able to make something happen.
We'll move on, though. I don't want to talk about this game too much, bringing up all the money I lost last night. But we will jump into it with our game market bets. Before we do that, if anyone watching this on YouTube has any player prop bets that they like, throw them into the chat. As always, we'll throw those into a parlay and see how it goes. Judah, we'll kick things off with you. What game are you looking at this week?
Yeah, I'm looking at Tampa Bay, San Francisco. I think a couple angles here. The first of which is, let me take a step back. There's some injuries here, but the markets, I think, have these teams as roughly equal. I mean, it's open 2.5. I think there's some injury concern with Mac Jones, perhaps pushing this to 3. But with the home field advantages, effectively implying these are kind of similar teams. And I would just kind of push back on where the Niners defense is right now, and certainly their pass defense. Right, losing Nick Bosa in isolation is bad. Right, you're taking a guy who's a top 5 pass rusher basically every year by our count. But what kind of the second order effects that I don't think are properly captured is, not only do you lose Nick Bosa in his production, but you also effectively lose Bryce Huff in his production, because when Bryce Huff now is going to get double teamed, his kind of ability to win diminishes, and you're getting a lot worse almost at 2 positions by virtue of one injury. And the result is just San Francisco was getting destroyed on defense. I mean, their EPA the last 2 games has been a complete disaster. They're not generating pressure. And the Rams were just attacking them downfield. They had a 10.6 EDOT last week. This is where the Bucs have really kind of centralized their offense this year relative to even last year, where they were very kind of screen focused. Was that Baker Mayfield he's got one of the highest deep attempt percentages, and he's winning downfield. And I think they should have a ton of success doing that against this Niners defense. Then on the other side, I think Mac Jones, if he does play, is not fully healthy. And an area where he has certainly struggled long term, and even in the small sample we have this year, is in kind of what I rechart, I should say, as pressure disruptions, which are any times that a quarterback can't go through his progression. That has happened very, very infrequently for Mac Jones, just because of the matchups he's had, as you can see. But he has not been a good quarterback when that happens. And if you want to look at kind of the x-axis of the chart for those who are watching on video, it's about a 14% disruption pressure rate. Tampa Bay sits at 29% pressure disruption, and that's been pretty consistent week to week. They send a ton of blitzes. This is kind of typical of the Todd Bowles defenses we see. I think that number for Mac Jones gets a little bit closer to 25-ish, and certainly if they can't get the ground game going, which this is the Tampa Bay defense that I think kind of every year under Todd Bowles, it seems, assuming Vita Vea is healthy, is one of the best run defenses in the league. And I see that as a spot where San Francisco can be in a bunch of kind of pass-heavy situations. Tampa Bay's pass rush can get home. And it doesn't, right, it's not a pass rush that, if you look at the overall numbers, it's not like, oh, this is a kind of scary Tampa Bay pass rush, but you add in their ability to when they do win, how they win, because of the blitzes, because of the pressure disruptions, and it's not something that Jones can mitigate. I think it becomes a very different matchup for San Francisco than what we saw last week. So you add both those things up. It's a San Francisco pass defense that I think is overrated by market, and is one of the worst defenses in the league right now. And the fact that I think this is a sneaky bad matchup for the Niners. And I'm all over Tampa Bay -3.5. You can get 5.5, 9.5. I like them all here.
Yeah, on the 49ers run game part, they haven't been able to run the ball much at all this year. Well, I don't know what the exact number is, but Christian McCaffrey's yards per carry, it's 3 point something, low threes. They've struggled to run the ball, and I think if you're setting up Mac Jones in a situation where it's consistent passing in longer down distances against the Todd Bowles defense, it's not going to look like what it looked like last Thursday. The chances are low, especially if he's a little bit banged up, which he probably is. Right? And Ricky Pearsall, still DNP on Wednesday and Thursday. Juwan Jennings got upgraded to limited on Thursday, so they still have injuries in that receiving core. And then on the other side, to the Nick Bosa point, I was curious. I went in and looked this morning. Last 2 years, EPA per play allowed with Bosa off the field is 0.24, which is dead last in the NFL. It's almost twice as high as the next closest team, which is the Carolina Panthers. And that's a sample of over 300 snaps, right? So it's not necessarily a small sample. With Bosa on the field, it's negative 0.06, which would be third in the NFL. So it's that injury in conjunction with some of the other defensive personnel things that they have, it's impactful against a Baker Mayfield-led Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense, which is playing really well this year. Like Baker's should be in the MVP conversation, so I like this side as well.
Yeah, I think that you hit the nail on the head there with that last point for sure. Is that I think we've talked about this game a little bit throughout the week, and it's sort of fluctuated between about 3.5 points, and obviously it's come down just a little bit in some markets where we've had some concerns just because, the Bucs have won a lot of these games like very late off of pretty heroic plays in something that I think is, it's tough to see that as a consistency, but I think the other side of it too is that what we've seen from San Francisco is that they've won a lot of really close games off of some late plays, off of some late, sudden change offense and things like that. So it is one of those sort of ebb and flow games where I am slightly concerned about the Bucs injury report. It's looking like they're not going to have Bucky Irving again, not going to have Chris Godwin, no Mike Evans. So it is one of those things that is a little bit of a worry. But I mean, like we've seen a lot this season, is that it's Emeka Egbuka and Baker Mayfield, and you have a chance. So, I'm right there with you guys that I think that that's a pretty good value right there.
Cool. We will move on to Mason, your game market bet. We're staying picking on the Ravens here.
Yeah. So, we're going to be, following the Ravens around a little bit, picking on them, bullying them a little bit because everybody's bullying them. So one of the I might be cheating here a little bit. We talked about this upstairs, but I'm taking the team points over on the Rams, and I actually moved it up a little bit. It was at 26.5. I moved it up to 27.5. You're going to get that at plus 115, I believe. The game total is reasonable at 44.5. I think we know that the Rams are going to do their part. I just see I'm not so sure about Baltimore if they're going to be able to do theirs. Still without Lamar Jackson, they scored just 10 points last week, and that's a big concern because that Texans defense is good, but they just looked, disjointed pretty much from start to finish in that game. So that is a big concern for them right now is they were winning games based off their offense because, or they were competing in games based off their offense. Their defense was really not giving them any help. And I think, I'm still just going to chase around this Baltimore defense until they prove that they can play the way that we've come to expect them. They're getting some key contributors back this week. Looks like Kyle Hamilton's potentially going to be back, Marlon Humphrey. They traded for Alohi Gilman, but still no Roquan Smith, still no Chidobe Awuzie. I'm just not sure that moves the needle for me. This defense was bad well before the injuries really hammered them. They're 29th in team defense grade, 30th in EPA per play allowed, 28th in successful play rate, 32nd in touchdown drive rate. This team has allowed 35.4 points per game. They gave up 37 plus to everybody not from Cleveland. So I don't see them having an answer for Stafford, Nakua, and Adams. Baltimore runs the second highest man coverage rate in the NFL, and these guys absolutely destroy man coverage. You cannot go out there man up, man to man with them, especially with the injuries that they have in the secondary, in the back end, and expect to win. I just don't see that being the case. I don't think that they're going to have very much success rate there. Stafford, he has an 86.7 PFF passing grade against man coverage. It's the same story for Nakua, 89.9 receiving grade. Adams, 82.5. They have a massive yards per route run against man coverage. Both of them over about 2 yards Nakua is all the way up to 3.82. So it has been a very impressive sight to behold with what they can accomplish against man coverage. They catch a lot of explosive passes. Stafford's 8.8 yards per attempt, 7 touchdowns, 133.7 passer rating against man coverage. So I just don't think in its current state that Baltimore is going to have any answers for this passing offense. And, I would like to see this be a game where the Rams understand that huge mismatch and they just go to it all night long, regardless of game script. I expect them to take a lead pretty early and hold on to it. But I would love to see them just absolutely put the foot on the gas and put Nakua into position, have some awareness there that this guy is eventually going to be in the conversation of, hey, this is the real deal. He is going to compete for that record, for the NFL receiving yardage record. And I hope that this is a game, 2 months down the road that we can point back to and be like, yeah, man, like he had 170 yards receiving in that game. And that's a big reason why he's able to compete for this spot here. I mean, his yardage line in this one is 99.5. So like you could tell that the market is really high on him. And I'm really high on the Rams. I was surprised to see that it wasn't up there in the range of, above 28. If you can get this game over 27.5 points, all they need is 28. I think that's pretty much a shoe-in at even money for sure.
We got boots on the ground in Maryland with Beckett in the YouTube chat saying it's supposed to be pouring in Baltimore Sunday for what it's worth.
Oof.
Does that scare you off at all?
Not so much because they still can't stop the run. They still can't do anything against the run. I think they're still going to be able to just gash them open on the ground. And I mean, I would still venture to say that they're probably still going to try to test this man coverage for sure, even if there's some rain.
Yeah, my biggest thing with the Ravens defense is they were 29th in pressure rate coming into this week, and you trade Odafe Oweh. The only two players on the Ravens who had double-digit pressures this year were Odafe Oweh and Nnamdi Madubuike, who was out for the year. So you don't have either of those guys. Stafford, we've talked about, one of the quarterbacks in the NFL who is most sensitive, has the biggest splits, clean versus pressured. From a clean pocket, he absolutely destroys defenses. And this is a Baltimore defense that is probably going to be a little bit healthier on the back end. I expect Kyle Hamilton's going to come back. You trade for Alohi Gilman, right? But he's going to be making, if he plays, he's going to be making his first start with less than a week of prep. Chidobe Awuzie is still out, probably. Roquan Smith still out, probably. So yeah, I don't think there's much needed to be said that this is a good spot for the Rams offense.
Yeah, it's I'll just say very quickly before we move on. I really wish this game did not have the rain in the forecast, because I think this is just be a full-on Rams onslaught opportunity. You mentioned the man stuff. I mean, it's a disaster right now, and Matthew Stafford's got like 0.5 EPA. Man, and like who is guarding Nakua and Devontae Adams? Ben, I'm telling you, you gotta strap up, get the pads on. They might need you a cornerback.
And I want you guys to understand the risk that I'm taking with this bet. My boss here, Gordon McGinnis, in the chat here, he's diehard Ravens fan. I'm putting it all on the line to bring you guys the money this week. So definitely pray for me on that one.
All right, we'll jump over to my game market bet, and we hit New England plus 7.5 last week. That was never in doubt, right? The hand up, the Cincinnati offense call could not have been more wrong. Jake Browning looked atrocious, and Jake Browning ended up getting there to 250. But good week overall with New England and then Rashid Shaheed. So hoping to follow that up with Cowboys, Panthers over 49.5, minus 112. And basically, like, if I can get a Cowboys game at under 50, I'm going to be interested. just as a general rule of thumb, they've allowed those Cowboys games have played to 61 points on average. Right, 50 if you want to use median, saying the overtime games against the Giants and the Packers drove it up 59 median. Like, this is a good offense, bad defense, and I think the Panthers defense sets up really well for the Cowboys offense to have a lot of success through the air. The Panthers are second in zone coverage rate, 80%, and they have a 25% pressure rate, which is last in the NFL. And if you're just going, the Cowboys are third in passing success rate against zone coverage. Like, if you're going to just sit back and play zone and not get any kind of pass rush, Dak Prescott is going to find the right guy, and he's going to have success with how he's playing this year, even down CeeDee Lamb, right? I had a little bit of concern with how their passing offense was going to look like once CeeDee Lamb went down, but we haven't really seen it drop off. Like, Dak is just elevating everyone around him right now. They're running the ball well. That is kind of the one area. The Panthers' run defense has quietly been pretty good. Derek Brown coming back, A'Shaun Robinson playing well in the interior. They've been one of the better run defenses in the league, just kind of by a overall efficiency allowed standpoint. But I think Dallas will be able to get pretty much whatever they want through the air. And then on the other side, the Cowboys are tied for last in the league in average yards allowed per play passing, right? And this is Bryce Young, one of the more frustrating quarterbacks in the league right now. There's stretches where he plays well. There's larger stretches where he doesn't. But I am not super confident in this Cowboys pass rush being able to impact them at a high level. Prior to last week against the Jets, the Cowboys pass rush was bottom 10 in the league in pressure rate. They went off last week against Justin Fields. I think that's more a function of the Jets. The Jets are have allowed like a 50% pressure rate. It's last in the league by a wide margin. So I think there's going to be opportunities for Bryce Young to attack this defense, for the run game with Rico Dowdle revenge game here to potentially get going against Dallas. And I think this is going to be a high-scoring back-and-forth game.
I think I like the bet. I think thinking through the game, one of the more interesting kind of matchup interactions here, and I'm curious thoughts, is like Carolina's run defense. I'm not ready to buy them as like this great unit, right? They were historically bad last season. They've been terrific so far. And then I feel like every week I want to talk about Clayton Adams as a revelation to the Dallas rushing attack. And I think that when you look at some of the differences, if CeeDee Lamb goes down, granted, they have George Pickens this year relative to other years, but having a run game that allows you to be so far ahead of the chains, Dallas is just not facing third and longs. Really goes such a long way. But I am curious how, or I should say it this way, I think we got to put the Carolina run defense as a real dominant force if they slow down this Cowboys team. I don't think that's happening, but want a flag plant there, I guess, ahead of the matchup. If the Panthers slow this team down, I think number one, it'll have a long way in determining the outcome of the game. But also, I think it really, we should update our priors on that team.
Yeah, that's a good shout. And on the other side, can kind of go with a similar angle. The Cowboys' run defense it's not good, but it's been better than it was last year. And this is a Carolina rushing offense that is top 5 in EPA per play. And they were good last year as well with Chuba Hubbard. So good test for the Cowboys run defense as well.
In something else I think we were talking about a little bit is this Panthers team has been looking for that number 2 receiver. And, they're going to be getting Jalen Coker back this week. And that's a big add for them because right now they're just not getting much production out of anybody outside of Ted McMillan. So that could be a really big addition for this game for sure.
Yeah, I was looking at the Jalen Coker lines before I came down here, and it's 29.5. Don't hate that at all in this matchup against Dallas. We will kick on over to prop bets. Mason, where are you going this week? So for me,
I wrote about this one in our bets of the week. This is one that I really love, and I'm going to be pretty much taken everywhere. Aaron Rodgers under 213.5 passing yards. This has just been a really tough look for a lot of quarterbacks coming up against this Browns defense. They have only allowed 2 passers to go over 200 yards this season. They've held guys like Joe Burrow, Jordan Love, Jared Goff, all under that mark. And the Browns are only allowing a 5% success rate against pass plays at 34.7%. And that really just doesn't bode well for a guy like Rodgers, who is not pushing the ball downfield. He has the lowest ADOT in the NFL among qualifying quarterbacks. That includes below guys like Dylan Gabriel, Kyler Murray, Cooper Rush, Tyrod Taylor. It's only 5.2 yards average depth of target for a guy that's just not pushing the ball down the field. I really have some struggle to believe that he's going to rack up a bunch of yardage against a team that has played so well and really limited some really big names at quarterback. Now, granted, some of that comes down to game state and how, the game has just sort of gone away from the passing game. But when we look at Jordan Love, that game was right there in the mix the whole time, and they held him under 200 yards. And with this, PFF has the key insights, which you have a big part in there. And I really loved this one for the Rodgers line here is Cleveland runs the most the fourth highest rate of man coverage in the NFL this season. And when we look at what Rodgers is doing against man coverage, it's sort of atypical, but he is 29th in passing grade versus man coverage at 56.3. So I really think he's going to struggle to push the ball downfield. Fine, guys, you're going to need a lot of yards after catch for this number to get anywhere near going over.
And I think the Steelers are going to try to run the ball a lot. And we saw it against the Vikings. Their last game before the bye, they had a week 5 bye, that Dublin game against the Vikings. They had 17 plays with 6 offensive linemen on the field, which is the second most of any offense in the game this season. And on all 17 of those plays, they also had Darnell Washington on the field. That is essentially a large portion of their plays with seven offensive linemen on the field. Darnell Washington is like the worst kept secret. He's listed at 265. He's like 300 pounds. Like you look at him next to Broderick Jones, he's basically an offensive lineman. They just bullied the Vikings and had by far their best game on the ground. Mike Tomlin, the Steelers coaching staff, has talked this week about when they play 4-3 teams, they're going to try to go heavy and get Darnell Washington on the field more to have success in the run game. The exact quote this week was, "You can't play 4-3 teams with 250-pound tight ends. There are weight classes in combat sports for a reason. When the edge people are 300 pounds, you better have somebody out there who looks like that animal." So they're just going to try to bully the Browns. And whether that's a good idea, I don't know. The Browns are first in rushing success rate allowed. They have not allowed much on the ground at all. But I think that's going to be the Steelers' game plan, which ties into Rodgers under as well.
I love this spot. Love this under. Also, think Stick's probably a tad too high for how the Steelers are trying to play offense.
Yeah. And you speak on the Darnell Washington thing too. I think even in a sense that they really need to keep that personnel out there in the pass for this game too, because it's just a clear mismatch on the edge there with Myles Garrett, Broderick Jones, Elijah McGuire, and Troy Fontenot. So I think that you could get into some trouble where Rodgers doesn't move like he used to, and he could be under some heavy fire if they're not getting the ball out quick too. So that's one of those things that it really does, you're taking a target off of the field for this, being able to chip and stay up against these, really talented edge rushers.
And he did get the ball out quick versus Minnesota and had success doing it. I think the difference with Cleveland is Minnesota, they're trying to do a lot pre to post snap. There's a lot of guys moving, and Rodgers was just able to capitalize on some of those windows against Cleveland, who was just man coverage, stickier coverage from the beginning of the snap, not guys getting the spots and then kind of matching up. It's going to be more difficult to do that. Judah, where are we going for you?
I'm going with an alt here. It's going to be Marvin Mims, 50 receiving yards. This is a spot where the Jets play a bunch of man coverage. Cortland Sutton is dominating targets there. I imagine he sees a whole bunch of Sauce Gardner, but in kind of second in the pecking order. He doesn't see the field a ton, but when he does see the field as a heavily targeted player, and he's got a 28% target rate against man. He is going up against a real weak part of this Jets secondary that's bleeding explosive plays, and they certainly are scheming some deep passes that have not yet hit for Nix and Mims. But those are certainly schemed in there, and I anticipate a deep shot or two. In addition to, I mean, they used this in the Thursday night game, some island game, where Mims had like 60 yards. They were just like getting the ball to him. Mason, I mean, I don't know your thoughts here, but if I maybe get a little sniffer here, I think that the Jets offense is really going to struggle to move the ball entirely against Denver, and Denver is a very pass-heavy team that I think actually we see a spot where Denver passes a whole bunch, and that means filtered targets for Knicks. On DraftKings, this 50-yard receiving, I want to say it was like plus 347 or something, plus 350. That's the spot I'll be looking to attack.
Yeah, and you did mention it. I do have my same game parlay is actually around this same matchup. I did come into that, and I had a nice one cooking with Mims too. I got a little bit scared off from it because I know that he's been dealing with a hip. They've been a little touch and go on the injury report with that, which it's one of those things that it's the gamesmanship thing. Sometimes he's on the injury report, sometimes he's not. But I do definitely see where you're saying is that's the explosive play rate. What has sort of concerned me is like like you did say, he's not getting on the field quite as much as he was this time last season. And what we have seen is it's been quite a bit more Troy Franklin. So I think I sort of went in a similar direction kind of, but with Troy Franklin being in that. But I do think that it's actually going to be a little bit more run heavy just because that's sort of been the tempo that we've seen from this Jets team. And we'll talk about it a little bit more when we get into the in the same game parlay section there. But I definitely do see where you're coming from. And I think this Jets secondary is a spot you can attack. And I actually also frankly think that they are still going to attack Sauce Gardner. Sauce has not been as stellar as he has been in past years. And, I know that there was some communication issue on the long touchdown last week where he thought he was going to get help over the top and he didn't. But at the same time, it's like the coverage just hasn't quite been there. And while, as his reputation goes, and coverage play is very volatile, like he is still a dangerous guy, but, this Broncos team has actually loved what they've seen out of Courtland Sutton. They've really been feeding him the rock a lot, and it has been paying off quite a bit for them. So it is going to be something that's interesting to see, and I find this game to be a decent spot as well for some money-making opportunities.
We'll hold off for the exact SGP until we get there.
STs.
Yeah. So stay tuned and make sure you don't drop off. On the Mims point, I think I was looking through just like cornerback unit separation grades that we do through our advanced coverage process. And I was really surprised to see the Jets ranking as highly as they did, which kind of speaks to like the Jets aren't getting burnt all the time necessarily. They're losing at the catch point, which not necessarily Mims' game. Like there are opportunities obviously against the Jets, and then not just vertical routes, like routes crossing the field. We saw that with the 40-yard Ryan Flournoy catch last week. Like there's some of those as well. But the Jets, the cornerbacks haven't been getting burnt, and that's kind of been Brandon Stevens' thing throughout his career. Like he's in position and he just can't find the football, which is happening again. So we'll finish it off.
Catch point and tackling also. Sorry,
yeah.
The tackling's also been atrocious. Which I think is also a little bit of a problem in this game, like getting guys into space after the catch. Another Marvin Mims angle there, if you will.
Yeah, for sure.
He's got the burners.
We'll wrap things out with my prop bet, which it looks like, just looking at a rundown here, I'm going head to head against Judah a little bit on this, and mine is Tua Tagovailoa under 223.5 passing yards. And the thought here is Tua, we've talked in a few spots about his man zone splits this year. Small sample, 92.1 passing grade against man, 55.8 against zone. The Chargers are fourth in zone coverage rate. They are a defense that wants to limit big plays. They've been good at limiting big plays. 8.7% explosive pass rate allowed is second best in the NFL, behind only the Packers. And when you look at this Dolphins offense, I think the Tyreek Hill injury is obviously it's notable, but especially for an offense like Miami, where Tua wants to have any trust in those first reads being open. And if they're not, and he's kind of progressing, things can kind of break down. And if you take away the first read on a lot of these plays, which is Tyreek Hill, I think that can create issues. A defense like Los Angeles, where their zone, they want to take away the first level, they're probably gonna create tight windows and tough decisions for Tua in this matchup. Down their best receiver, I think the way you want to attack this Chargers defense is through the run game, which maybe Miami can, maybe they can't. They've had rushing success at times this year, but I just don't have a lot of faith in the Dolphins' ability to rip off big plays. So him clearing this line, in my opinion, is super high pass volume. And maybe they get that because the Chargers can't do anything on offense. But again, this is a Dolphins defense that has really struggled throughout this year as well. So 223.5 passing yards.
I jump in here with the counter.
Tell me why I'm wrong.
Yeah, I feel like we have to. I actually don't hate the play, kind of from a median's point of view. I think the tail angle I'm attacking is, number one, the play volume. I mean, Miami has been extremely pass heavy this year. I think they're like 4% adjusted pass rates. Would also give a shout to, I think this is a quiet little article that does not get enough coverage, but Timo every week on PFF.com puts out just a whole bunch of charts kind of recapping the weeks, and there's a ton of really valuable data in there, which has Miami as one of the pass heavy teams adjusted for situation. I guess there are kind of two angles here, and this less directly related to Tagovailoa. It is that everyone's talking about the Chargers pass blocking woes, and like I think that it is somewhat baked in. What I think is maybe a little less baked in is the degree to which this is like a Chargers line, a Chargers offensive line that's really struggling. I mean, at left tackle, right, Austin Deculus, I think that's how you pronounce his name, he's got like a 27 PFF pass grade. He's being left on an island. It's early, but like he's being left on an island like 65% of the time, like well above league average. I think that's a major problem for the Chargers offense that is like full of weak links. I mean, if you just look at the PFF offensive line ratings, you got like a 50, at center, and the rest are in the 40s. And now I think the counter to it is like, oh, this is a Miami pass rush, which hasn't been good, which is true using the season-long numbers. But, I mean, maybe I'm baking in a little too much projection in here. There's way too much talent on this defensive front for them to kind of be a bottom-tier pass rush. With like what we saw from Chop Robinson last year. I mean, he's fallen off this year. Is that like a aberration? Maybe. In Sealer, Jalen Phillips actually has had a pretty decent year. Bradley Chubb. And then you start to also look at, well, wait a second. Let's look at the past couple of weeks against the Jets and Carolina, and the pressure has really come along. I mean, Justin Fields ran into a whole bunch of pressure, but like they were 56% last week, 41% the week before. Their quick pressure rate is up to like 15%. That aggregated over the course of the season would be at the top of the league. Pressure disruption rate's very high. And that's a major problem, I think, for LA, both because of the state of the offensive line and also like I'm not sure they can run the ball. Like, yes, Miami has been atrocious, but it shocked me for Vidal and Hassan Haskins to have monster games. It wouldn't shock me, but I don't think that. I think there's certainly a path where they don't, and even still, it can set up a lot of these kind of bad passing situations, and that's where Miami is like not going to take advantage of. And if you're not running the ball, like there are going to be a bunch more plays than Miami is accustomed to. On the defensive front, very quickly, I'm more afraid of teams against the Dolphins when you can generate a pass rush with 4 very quickly. That's not, yes, they traded for Adafo Owe, like that's not where the Chargers have been at this state. Not to mention their single high rate is like very steadily increasing. Their man coverage rate is increasing. They played a season high last week. So all of those concerns I think are totally fair. The kind of case against that is somewhat on a play volume basis, and the fact that those are going to be passing plays for the Dolphins, and also just that I'm not terrified of this Chargers defense given the state of their pass rush. So that's my counter. I guess my SGP if we want to do it now. 33-1. Tua Tagovailoa 280. Dolphins -2.5. And I despite me kind of having some reservations about Vidal over 30.5 rush yards, I do still think the Chargers are going to try and run the football. I'm really banking on like probably 8 to 9 carries here, and the inverse correlation is a little bit too appealing not to take that with everything that I said about the state of the Dolphins defense.
Yeah, I didn't make it my game marking bet, but the under 44.5 in this game also very appealing to me. Like I've kind of been betting against the Chargers with these offensive line injuries. I did with Washington last week. So yeah, like I can see a scenario where Chargers can't get anything going on offense and Tua just has super high pass volume and gets there. I just don't love the matchup for him. And I think kind of like you said, like in a median state, I just think that number's too high.
Yeah, I and one of the big crux here is like, obviously no Tyreek Hill is a big, hurdle to overcome. And so far they've been able to really work Darren Waller into this situation pretty well, which has honestly was a shock to me right off the bat. They really got him involved. And in that first game, he had 8 routes run and 4 targets. So like you could tell that they're really making a concerted effort to get him up to speed and get him on the field. I mean, he does come up against a pretty tough matchup here. He's probably going to see quite a bit of Derwin James. So, that is one of the spots that it is something that we do need to look out for. But I do like where you guys are sort of headed with that one. I know you guys are head to head, but like I do like the under in this one. It's just 2 ugly offensive lines. Like it's going to be pretty tough. Now I understand that neither has really pressured at like super, super high rates the Dolphins sort of have been able to figure some things out, but it's just been one of those sort of like touch and go situations on both sides of the ball. So yeah, it's going to be definitely an interesting matchup and potentially one you're not going to see on Red Zone very much. So
we will jump into SGPs, but before we do that, let's talk about preparing for your kid's future with Fabric by Gerber Life. As parents, we do everything we can to set up our kids for a successful future, academics, team sports, college admissions. But what about getting started financially when they're out on their own? Fabric makes it easy for you to set up an investment account for your child now that grows with them and helps prepare for their financial future. Fabric by Gerber Life was designed by parents for parents to make it easy to plan for and manage your family's financial path. With a kid's investment account from Fabric, you can start investing in your child's future today. While your kids can't invest when they're minors, a UGMA Kids Investment Account allows you to invest on their behalf now and gives their investments more time to grow. Funds can be used for nearly anything benefiting your child, from tuition and books to summer camps and after-school activities. And when they're adults, they can use the funds for their first home, new car, or even to start a business. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their families. Start investing in your child today at meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. That's meetfabric.com/PFFNFL, meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. Portfolios managed by Fort Washington Investment Advisors Incorporated. Additional services provided by Apex Clearing Corporation. All investing is subject to risk. Learn more at meetfabric.com. All right, we will jump into it. Mason, do you actually, I know we kind of talked already about Broncos and Jets. Do you just want to carry that on? And
we can rip the Band-Aid off of that one. So for my SGP, I'm looking at that Denver Jets game that we talked about earlier. I have one that's 65-1 here. I'm looking at Bo Nix under 31.5 attempts. J.K. Dobbins to go over 100 rushing yards, and Troy Franklin to have 80-plus receiving yards. So really, this has just been a story that we've seen from this Jets defense a lot this season. Poor in coverage, leading to strong receiving efficiency. They fall behind early, which leads to low passing volume, and they can't tackle, which leads to high outputs on the ground after contact. We'll start with Troy Franklin, which I alluded to earlier as I did play around with the idea of it being Mims. I got a little bit scared off just potentially from the hip, potentially just from his usage, not seeing the biggest snap share among these receivers. It's really looking like Troy Franklin has been that number 2 receiver for them, not necessarily Mims. Mims was outsnapped by Pat Bryant last week, and like I said, I find that a little bit hard to believe. I think there might be something going on with the hip there. But when we say we're going to be attacking this Jets coverage, like the Jets coverage is pretty horrendous right now. They're 29th in coverage grade versus wide receivers. And, like we said, they've been sticking there a little bit, but what we haven't been able to see is them to really, put their money where their mouth is and stop passes. They've been in a position and they're failing. And right now, when I look at Troy Franklin, I'm seeing a plus matchup in the slot against rookie Malachi Moore, because what we've seen is Michael Carter is going to be out with a concussion potentially here. And even if he wasn't, they've still just struggled in that position. Moore has a 41.6 PFF coverage grade. He's allowing 14.4 yards per coverage target. He had those he allowed those 2 big catches last week versus Dallas to Ryan Flournoy, which obviously were huge for us. He ended up having 50 plus on those 2 catches alone. And when I look at the Jets' struggles in the slot specifically, they're allowing the 4th highest yards per coverage target allowed at 8.8, and 22.7% of their of their receptions go for 15 plus yards. That's the 2nd highest in the NFL. So I really see an opportunity there for Troy Franklin to find space to work with and really, make this Jets defense pay. For Bo Nix, I think the low volume, like we did talk about it, is that this team has been passing a ton, but I think that when we see they have the Jets have faced the lowest number of passing plays in the NFL this season at 53.3, and it's because they have the 2nd most plays by any defense when trailing by 7 or more points. The game scripts just haven't really gone their way. I see a situation where the Broncos can go up pretty big early and just sort of continue to build on a lead there, run the football, and get out of there with a win. Where that's really just been the story that we've seen out of everybody that's played the Jets this year, is the Jets, if they're going to come back, they have to come from behind. They're not really going to play with a lead. They're not really going to put it in a tight game script where, it's back and forth. It just has not been what we've seen from this team. And no quarterback against them this year has thrown more than 31 times. The highest was Rodgers in week 1 at 30. And we already know about some of what they were doing early in the season, where it was a lot of the short passing game and not so much running the football. But then, I think that leads to a big game for Dobbins this week, who has actually been extremely productive for them. The Jets are decent overall against the run. They just struggle in some key spots, and we alluded to it earlier. One of them is tackling. Tackling has been a huge struggle for them. They're 30th in tackle grade. They've allowed the 3rd most tackles missed tackles versus the run at 23. And they're 30th in yards after contact per attempt. They allow 3.6 yards after contact per attempt. And that's led to some pretty big days on the ground for some backs that have faced them. 2 backs have had over 130. Javonte Williams had 110 after contact. So this is one of those things where, I'm going to be bigger on Dobbins, and that's why I'm pushing him up to that 100 range, where I think he does have that potential to get in there. He has 14 missed tackles this season, missed tackles forced this season. That's tied for the 11th most. He has 255 yards after contact. That's the 7th most. Now, those are volume stats and not necessarily, per carry stats. So it does leave some room for that efficiency metric to come into play. But I really do think that he's going to get the volume that's going to allow him to reach these numbers. And I think 100 is pretty attainable there for him.
Yeah, we won't spend too much time on this game because we talked about it a little bit already. I think the one thing didn't necessarily bring up, talked about the Jets' pass protection a little bit earlier. They're allowing a 50% pressure rate. And against this Broncos defense, the way Justin Fields responds to pressure, I think it could get very ugly for the Jets offense, especially if they're not, they have been a pretty good offensive success rate team. It's mainly been the big negative plays that have hurt them, but I don't know if that's even going to be the case against Denver. Weird things happen in London games. Maybe it is, but we'll see. We'll round it out with my SGP, and feels a little bit like a fish move to back something that happened for a bad team last week. for a second straight week. But I like the matchup for the Titans passing offense this week against Las Vegas. And part of this is Las Vegas should be in the running for worst team in the NFL. And I don't know if we're necessarily putting them in that category, given that they're 4.5-point favorites. Like I don't necessarily think the Raiders, with how they're playing right now, should be 4.5-point favorites over anyone. And I know Tennessee has been atrocious, and they shouldn't have been back in that game and won the game last week against Arizona. But I do think there were some promising things to take away from their passing offense. So the SGP is Cam Ward, 250-plus passing yards, Calvin Ridley, 100-plus and a touchdown, Titans money line. That is 55-1. And the thought here is the Raiders are top 10 in EPA per rush allowed. They're bottom 5 in EPA per pass allowed. It's a pass funnel defense, and the pass defense is really bad. Right? The Raiders are 31st in PFF coverage grade as a defense. Their cornerbacks are 5th worst in average separation grade so far this year. And that's important specifically for Ridley, because Ridley's a guy who's not necessarily going to win at a high rate in close quarters, on tight windows, throws, on contested targets. But I do think he's going to be able to create separation against this secondary, given what we've seen. And the Titans are expected to get J.C. Latham back, which TBD on what that means exactly. Latham only played 1 week this year, week 1. He went down with the injury, hasn't been back since. But the backup right tackles they've been throwing out have been very bad. Right? 13.2% pressure rate allowed from that right tackle position since week 2. That's second worst in the NFL. So getting Latham back, I do think, provides at least some bump for them on the offensive line. And the Raiders are a bottom 10 pressure team in the NFL this year, even with Max Crosby. Right? So I think bad secondary, pass rush that not necessarily is going to wreck the game. And Cam Ward's been more aggressive the last 2 weeks. If you look at his percentage of throws that have gone 10-plus yards downfield, first 3 weeks, that was 33%, 21st in the NFL. He's been sixth highest the last 2 weeks. And you saw some great downfield throws coming back against Arizona last week. The one over the middle of the field deep, the one down the sideline to Ridley to get them in field goal range. Like, you can see the arm talent's there. You can see why he was drafted first overall. Situation has been bad. Cam Ward hasn't really played well. But I think this is a Raiders defense where you can keep building on what he showed last week. And I think the Titans have a real chance to win this game again. Right? Geno's been terrible. We talked about that. The defense can't stop anyone. The run game, Genty's getting hit in the backfield on a ridiculous amount of plays. I like kind of the Titans winning through their pass game in this spot here at 55-1.
Yeah, and I think a big reason why a lot of people like Cam Ward coming out is because he plays like he has nothing to lose. Like, he is fearless. He wants to push the ball down the field. And, I mean, they've played some tougher defenses. I think that this is definitely a spot where he can, exploit a really struggling Raiders secondary. And I just, looked it up. Ben, if you were to guess who the 2 highest graded coverage players are on the team, no snap limits, obviously. So, some small samples are up there with some higher grades. But who would you think are the 2 highest coverage graded players on this Raiders defense?
I know Jamal Adams is one of them.
I think that says a lot. He is their highest graded coverage defender right now at 78.7. Throw a guess out for 2. It's somebody you would not ever expect.
I've got nothing.
7 total coverage snaps, though, so to be fair. It is Max Crosby at 68.3. I think that just sort of illustrates what we're getting out of this Raiders secondary right now. Now, granted, Max Crosby's, coverage sort of comes from the bat to the interception type thing, and those things aren't really consistent or repeatable in any situation, really. But I think it just is a great little example there of how bad the rest of this unit is playing in coverage. It's not really that pretty.
Yeah, he might. I mean, he had 4 passes defense in that
4
Bears
batted
game.
balls. Yeah.
And on Ridley, if you look at the teams that they've played, not the easiest cornerback gauntlet to go through for him so far this year. I know it was a disappointing start to the year for him, but Denver with Surtain, Indianapolis with Charvarius Ward playing as well as he has to start the year, Houston, obviously great cornerback group there. And then the other two games, he had 57 receiving yards against the Rams and 131 last week. So Titans have looked very bad, and it's it doesn't feel great, but I like the spot for him.
I think I love the Titans spot. I guess I don't want to call it a quibble, but and I'm gonna butcher the pronunciation of his last name, but Alik Yonomar, I don't know how to pronounce his name. Like, he seems to be the deep. I mean, like, Ridley also is winning deep, but like that seems to be Ward's preferred deep target.
Yeah.
And like just price adjusted, I kind of like looking at him. But I would just highlight your points on Cam Ward. He's very aggressive, and like the one area where Cam Ward is not like in the bottom left corner of a chart is in like deep passing. Like, he can throw the ball deep, and I think like last week's kind of a fluke in the sense of like the fact that they won that game was a little crazy. But like, if Ward builds off of the deep passing and if he continues to be aggressive, and that's the game plan against Vegas, and maybe it gives Brian Callahan some confidence to throw a little bit more on early downs. Like that's a spot I love, but definitely on with you guys there on the Titans deep passing game, and like this Vegas team's pretty bad.
Yeah, and to your point, Judah, I actually was shopping this same market for my same game parlay at first, just because I do, and I actually did include Elik Eumannor because I thought that they were going to be able to push the ball down the field a little bit here. And to Ben, to your point, like the things that we've seen from Ward, like he's played really, really tough secondaries. And I mean, I just look back to that Broncos game in week 1 where some of these throws are open. He's making some solid reads, and sometimes his receivers just aren't really helping him out there, and he's really just missing some of these by, just a little bit. And all they really need to do is get dialed in, ride that momentum. I know that, we don't have a, spot on the spreadsheet for momentum, but that is a potential right there. Like, this team saw a shot go in the bucket, and now they know that they can accomplish something. And I think that this is a spot where they can really, be high achieving. Or higher achieving, I guess, would be the same, because their bar's pretty low right now. So,
and look, the Titans were a team who, like, there were a decent amount of people out there who were like, this team could be sneaky this year. It's like there's reasons to think that they can be better than the absolute worst team in the NFL that they showed through the first 4 weeks of the season. So, like that one to close it out. Some of the prop bets that got thrown out that people in the chat liked: Dylan Sampson, anytime touchdown. That's a long shot right there, 14-1. Troy Franklin over 50 receiving yards, plus 135. Tying into Mason's SGP. Jane Daniels over 221.5 passing yards. We also had Micah Pickus throw in some angles he liked. Unders on Derrick Henry, over receptions for Laporta, and overs for Igbuka. Igbuka, man, he's been tearing people up.
Stud.
Hopefully it continues for I know you called out Tampa Bay. I also personally bet Tampa Bay -3 earlier in the week, so hopefully he keeps it rolling.
What's Trevor say? It's third and Igbuka.
We transitioned to first in Igbuka, second in Igbuka.
It's always Igbuka.
Like I called out at the top, if you want to dive into all of this data and the grades and some of the stuff we're talking about, you can do that with a PFF Plus subscription. Get access to premium stats. In-game grades are now live in premium stats now as well, and you get access to the PFF player prop tool in the app. Thanks, everyone, for listening. We'll be back with Week 7.